Well, hello and welcome to North Carolina Talks Politics. My name is Keith, and in this video, we are going to conclude part 3 of our interview with Andy Nilsson, who is a candidate for the United States Senate seat in North Carolina, challenging Thom Tillis. Today's topic will be looking at tariffs. As many of you know, Donald Trump recently implemented tariffs on other countries that we have been doing business with for years. And now we're going to listen to see what Andy thinks about the Trump tariffs. Does he agree with them or not? Well, here is Andy's answer. Okay, Andy, now I have a video of Thom Tillis and him talking about the Trump tariffs. And he's asking some questions. I think this was from NBC or MSNBC. And so I think they clipped parts of it together. I've actually listened to the full 6-minute clip. So it does get the gist of everything that was said. But listen to Thom Tillis as he talks about Donald Trump and the tariffs. And I'm going to stop it periodically and just get your input on this, if that's okay. So let's go ahead and go to that, and we'll see what happens.
It looks like we've got a novel approach here in terms of an alla prima approach. I'm not a trade expert, and I'm not going to question it at this point. I do have a question about, at the end of the day, the other thing in management consulting we like to focus on is this concept of one throat to choke. In other words, when you're finally taking a look at a strategy, someone has to own it. And you can't say that it's the president or the vice president. So my first question to you, in this scenario, the decision maker who decided the alla prima approach, who has obviously had to have spent time anticipating what we saw in the markets and some of the pushback, I'm assuming this all got gamed out.
So I want to ask you a question. Based on what you see from the Trump tariffs, how would you be in favor of doing it the way Trump has done it, or would you have preferred a different option concerning the tariffs that he has been implementing on other countries?
I would have done it just the way Trump did it. Look, Thom Tillis is a politician. He talks like typical politicians talk when it comes to trade policy. They think that, well, you got to go into an elaborate negotiation, like the GATT, General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. You need to start with a treaty, and that will go on for months and months. And then you'll agree on tariff levels, and then you'll implement those, and your tariffs will take effect in a year. And then you'll sit on it for a couple of years, and then you'll renegotiate through something called the WTO, the World Trade Organization. That is politicians speak on how to handle tariffs and trade. Donald Trump doesn't talk that way. He talks like a business person. And a business person goes like this. It's a negotiation. I may start with my highest figure and then work down from that, or I may start with another figure and work around from that. But at the end of the day, the result of the negotiation will be, if we're in a good relationship, will be a net win for all of us, but especially for me and my country.
And right now we could agree that the United States has been horribly taken advantage of over the years. Would you agree with that?
Oh, we have been so fleeced, it's not funny. We have been so fleeced, it's not funny, by politicians who can't negotiate, who don't have a business sense in their body, a business bone in their body, of both parties, Democrat and Republican, who have said that they understand trade policy, but they want to follow those very elaborate international organizations like I alluded to, the GATT and the WTO and stuff like that. All those organizations were set up by politicians for politicians. The ones that they affected were businesses and farmers and workers and regular people. What Donald Trump is doing now is he's changing the balance. He's changing the dialogue back to between the people it directly affects and the foreign countries. He's cutting out the professional negotiating class, because the professional negotiating class has got us to the point. I mean, you just turn on the TV, they'll comment constantly on the TV about, well, Trump's so wrong about tariffs and Trump doesn't understand trade policy. What's the common denominator on all of them? The common denominator on all of them is they're academics or they're professional media people. There's not anyone from business who will say that, and there's not any workers that will say that. But instead, they go to somebody from Harvard, or they go somebody from Columbia University, or they go to somebody from New York Times, and they say, well, what do you think? As if someone from the New York Times or Columbia University can talk to people in North Carolina about how to keep textile jobs. Do they have any idea how to do that? They don't. They have no clue, mostly because they never worked a real job. Donald Trump does, because he's owned businesses and he's employed people. So what he's doing is a negotiation. That's all that it is. It's a negotiation, and it's going to end up giving us the result that we want and need in this country. If we allowed things to go the way they were going, we would have zero manufacturing base left in this country. Zero. It's already small, but we would get to the point where we've got nothing left. And we're solely and wholly dependent on countries like China, communist red China. Is that really where we want to buy everything from and live our whole lives based on? Well, the liberal woke left was leading us in that direction.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And, I was thinking, Thom Tillis, there's two things I wanted to bring. One thing here, and then I'll bring up something else. But, when he was sworn in office, I think when he was elected in 2014, we were at $18.8 trillion in debt. Now we're up to about $36 trillion in debt. I guess my question is, if we continued up that cliff, we would fall over the precipice. These people, it's really troubling that they are not focusing on America first. And you made a great point about the people, these commentators, these pundits that they bring in to try to instruct us and tell us about what's best for us. And we continuously see things get worse and worse and worse for the American worker, the American citizen. It doesn't improve.
Well, they told us in the 90s, and the first factory jobs that I ever ran was in High Point, North Carolina. And they told us then, Bill Clinton and his people told us that NAFTA, North America Free Trade Agreement, was going to be the salvation. It would be the future, that all our lives would be so much better by NAFTA. NAFTA. And then a gentleman from Texas ran against Bill Clinton. It wasn't George Bush. It was another gentleman named Ross Perot. And Ross Perot said in 1992, if we pass NAFTA, you remember the quote? You will hear a giant sucking sound. A giant sucking sound of jobs from the U.S. going south of the border of Mexico. And people laughed him off the stage. They said he was a fool and he didn't know what he was talking about. And I'll tell you right now, Ross Perot was dead set right. Because I was in High Point, North Carolina, and there was factories on every corner, and I know that because I was delivering to them furniture and bedding. After NAFTA passed, and after I went back there about 10 years after NAFTA passed, I drove past those same factories. Henry Don, Leggett and Platt. So there were many furniture places. Locked padlocks on the gates.
Yeah.
And so what happened to the workers?
That's the key.
What happened to the machine operators? What happened to the sewing machine operators? What happened to the furniture makers? What happened to the upholsterers? I'll tell you what happened to them. They went home and they got on benefits because there wasn't anything for them. And so for Larry Summers and all those egghead academics who want to talk to us about how their view of trade policy works, why don't you come down here to Thomasville and High Point, North Carolina, and sit down in the homes and the trailers and the living areas of those people who work there and tell them how their lives are so much better because of NAFTA. But you never will. You'll never do that because you feel like you're better than them.
That was United States Senate candidate from North Carolina, Andy Nilsson, answering the question about the Trump tariffs. Does he agree with the strategy and the implementation of the way Donald Trump is working through these tariffs? Well, we hope to have Andy on many more times and hope that you will follow so that we can know more about what each candidate believes and where they stand on certain positions. My goal here at Alamance County Talks Politics is to give you the most accurate voter information so that we can once again make America great again. Until next time, take care.